And we're off. Yes, yes. Once again, it's another end of the week. Another week spent with the fellas. Getting ready to talk these sports topics right here. A little hour late, but here we are. Crossover Sports Podcast, episode 17. Let's go. I'm here with the faithful. So go ahead, Matt. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, man. It's Matt here. Can't wait for this Super Bowl to be over with because this pregame stuff is driving me nuts. But other than that, it's happy to be with y'all tonight and talk sports and literally talk Super Bowl and these Sixers, man. Can't wait.
Right down the line.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty excited. Got some good topics in line, especially with some of the recent executive orders that Trump has signed and some of the recent things going on in the sports world. I think we'll have a good podcast.
All right, y'all. Y'all know how we usually start this, John. For those of you that usually watch us, you're loyal viewers, or you've just joined us, how we start this off, we call it crossover hot takes, and that is where we talk about things that go on, current events, current happenings in the world that don't necessarily have to do with sports. We can talk politics, we talk anything. So we have two topics this week. One that we didn't get to last week, and a new one. Usually we start this off with politics, but I'm gonna throw a curveball in there. We're gonna start off with some sports things. I think this might be the first time that we started a crossover hot take with a sports topic. This podcast was a sports topic for our hot take. So I'm gonna throw a curveball in there, and then we'll talk about the other one. Um, so guys, I want to throw out this one: the UConn women's basketball team. I I know. Those of you who hear that, you're all like, yeah, they dominate. They're a dominant team, and yes. So the question around that is UConn's dominance ruining the game and the sport of women's college basketball? Go ahead and you can take that, Trey.
I don't know. I don't know if you could say it's ruining women's college basketball. I mean, they produce some of the better college basketball players. Um, and it's funny because we have this conversation in the NBA. Do super teams like the Warriors, or you go back to 2010 where you had the Big Three in Miami, do teams like that ruin competitiveness? And to be honest with you, I don't think that you can say um, that teams like that really ruin or um, yeah, or I guess ruin a whole a whole league or a whole sport. Now with the UConn women's basketball team, um, they are on a whole nother level. I mean, I mean, they probably could be a WNBA team, expansion team, and would do fine, probably make the playoffs. That's how good UConn is, and that's how dominant they have been for the past, like, I mean, I don't know how long, but just in the last 5 years or so. I mean, I think they've won something like 100 straight games or something like that, which is ridiculous. That's just off the charts. I guess from that standpoint, maybe you could say it's ruining the sport because they're so dominant that it's almost like um, there's no like if like they're not gonna lose, that type of thing. Uh, but at the same time, if I'm on the other side, I'm not UConn. I'm a team like a Baylor or another another women's powerhouse or another top 25 women's basketball team. I want to be the team to knock off UConn. So that would inspire me. I like going back to last year's final, the Warriors were up 3-1, but they had the best. They're by record alone, they are the best team in NBA history. Yet the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were a great team, weren't, by just by you look at depth chart and by record, were not the better team. Yet they were able to come back from the 3-1 deficit and beat the so-called best team ever. So I guess is so that from that mindset, like I don't know if it's necessarily ruining it, and I think that's because I feel like if you're an underdog in playing UConn, like it would feel that much greater to beat them. And I'm not necessarily of the mindset that dominance, by one team ruins a whole sport. I mean, because there's always going to be, I think in women's basketball in particular, a lot of times there's always going to be that one team that just like stands well above all the rest. And that's not to, diminish the competitiveness of women's basketball players. I mean, there's some very, very, very good women's basketball players, and probably some of them could, match up with some NBA players. And some of the college players probably could match up with men's college basketball players. But I can't really say that UConn's dominance is ruining. Well, I can say, though, that it might take away a little bit from like you wanting to actually watch UConn play, especially when they play some lower tier teams, and it might take away a little bit from you get to March Madness and the championship when championship time comes around, because it's almost like UConn's going to win. But that's my thoughts on it.
Is UConn ruining women's basketball? No. I'll tell you why. Because think about this. You have to look as far back as when Pat Summitt was coaching, when she was alive at the time. Pat Summitt was college basketball, and with Tennessee, and the fact you saw Tennessee and UConn go at it, believe it or not, that was must-see TV. Whether you're just from a basketball standpoint, you watching UConn in Tennessee. But to say, is UConn ruining the game? No. Because if you are a program, you're a program, and the bar is UConn. UConn is the bar. How do you meet that bar or push the bar? As a coach, you have to think about that. Like, what is something that UConn doing that we're not doing? Or what is something that we can do that UConn isn't doing that we can exploit in the like? So it's a whole lot of factors going in. One of them is recruiting. The other one is coaching. And players buying in. Now, I will admit, I don't watch a whole lot of women's basketball. I really admit that, because different. Sure. With that being said, as a coach, you have to realize, like, okay, what is it about UConn that I can take apart, that I can take with me? What is it about UConn that I can at least meet the bar, or be at least in the ballpark? That's the number one thing. I mean, to say that this is a super team, I'm not gonna call it. I'm not gonna call it that as far as that. However, you have to take into account the fact of that they're the better team right now. I mean, believe it or not, what Dawn Staley is doing in South Carolina right now, she's doing great things. I mean, is it UConn worthy? No, but they're in that conversation. But I'm using that as an example because, you can be in the ballpark and hang with UConn. Could you knock them off? You could. It's always a chance. Every game you got a chance. You got to put yourself in the position to be the better team at the end of the day. And for however many games UConn has gone through, no one has yet to step to the challenge and say, "Hey, we're going to take you down." I mean, I'm not saying that every team is going to lay down to UConn. They're going to give them their best shot, and unfortunately, UConn just smack them down to the ground. Let them know your team. Get your game up. Get your weight up. And players feel that, and as a coach, you feel that too. Fans feel that and everything else. But as a team, you have to say to yourself, how can I not only beat everybody else? If you try to find a way, my thing is simply this: UConn's a bar, yes, but while you're trying to beat UConn, you try to make sure you try to beat everybody else while doing so. And this is like, try to get yourself ready to elite, if not powerful team of women's college basketball. And that's how we'll look at it. I'm like this. As a coach, I'm like this. We are going to learn how to beat UConn. And to do that, we're going to run it this way. And by the way, here's the schedule. So we get to UConn, and by the time we get there, we are comfortable in our schemes, we're comfortable in our plays, we're comfortable with our personnel, and we know exactly what to do. And when the pressure situation increases and heightens, we're cool, we're all right, and we know how to handle ourselves. So it's a lot of things that go on. It's coaching, it's preparation, it's a lot of stuff that goes on. As a team, you have to prepare yourself to beat a team like this, to know so to say, well, is it ruining women's basketball? Hell no. It's just the fact that you got to rise to the challenge. I believe a lot of these players, a lot of these coaches, a lot of these schools have tried to rise to the challenge, have risen to a challenge, and failed. If you fail, I mean, that's not a bad thing. You're still alive, but let's hope you don't fail too badly. And like, one thing I hate about women's basketball is lopsided scores, and it drives me nuts. But at least okay, I have to do ABC to beat this team. So the answer to answer your question, the answer is no. Teams got to learn how to adjust, learn how to adjust to your opponent, how to do what you have to do in order to beat your opponent on that given night. That's my take on that. You just gotta learn. You gotta learn how to adjust.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it a clean sweep. I'm going to say no. The UConn women do not ruin the sport of women's college basketball, just because that's what sports like basketball and football need. They need a dominant team. Does anybody think that Alabama ruins the game of college football? No. Most people would say that, we know the result most years. We just had a repeat of a championship game, not just in the NBA this year, but we had one in college football where we had Clemson and Alabama. No one complains because Alabama's been in the last couple title games the last 3, 4, 5 years, But you complain about women's basketball as if the result isn't just as determined as it is in college football, where you're guaranteed to at least have one half of your championship game done. Now, UConn is a better team. They haven't lost in 3 years. The last team to knock them off was Notre Dame. And so you have this team. And what Gina Auriemma has done, having this dominant UConn women's basketball team, hasn't been done since Wooden. Since Wooden had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar back when he was Lou Alcindor and all those great players at UCLA. And right now, the women's basketball team at UConn has won 98 straight games. They are nearly at 100 straight games. They might be at 100 straight games before this month is over. And just that dominance. That's not something that you see often. I made an article about this. Cheap disclaimer. WatsonSportsTakes.com. Check that out. Check out them articles. I think they're pretty good. But the women's, we need to take dominance in all sports and greatness in all sports and appreciate it. How often are we ever going to see a team that wins championships? But most people, and Matt touched on this a little bit when he was talking, most people don't understand the dedication, the hard work it takes to be Coach Gino Auriemma and to exceed expectations or meet expectations. And then at UConn, the expectation is a women's championship every year. And to always meet that and to not fall short of that in 3 years, that's an amazing accomplishment. Nick Saban didn't even reach that the last 2 years, right? And he's a great college football coach. But Gino Auriemma has kept this team undefeated and winning championships for the last 3 years. UConn has won 22 championships. Now, to put that in perspective, the only other entity to be anywhere close to them in championships is Serena Williams. And she just got her Jordan Year championship this weekend. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But UConn has 22 championships. Serena Williams has 23 by herself, right? So that is dominance. Now, Serena Williams, that's a 20-year span of dominance. And UConn's dominance has been just as long. They've been dominating women's college basketball since the 90s. And they've consistently kept dominating, just like Serena Williams. Now, this isn't a fair comparison because, there's 4 other players on the basketball court and it's just Serena Williams, right? But it's the same thing. Coaching, good coaching, dedication, and great players. And that's what it is, right? I will never say a dominant team is bad for any sport because, like Trey said earlier, a dominant team should make any team. See, a dominant team is great for the sport for any sport because it elevates the team that eventually beats them. Notre Dame was elevated in 2014, 2013 when they beat UConn. Notre Dame got on a platform not there because for a while, like Matt said, it was UConn and Tennessee. Now there's no other team to really dominate with UConn. Tennessee's fallen off since Pat Summitt, may she rest in peace, passed away. But you still have them teams. You still have the Notre Dames, the Baylors. But then you have UConn, which is on another tier. And if you can knock UConn off, that just says a lot about your team. Just like it says a lot about Clemson, that even though it took them 2 years, when they finally knocked off Alabama, that payoff with that championship. It's the same thing. When somebody knocks off UConn, they're going to have so much appeal. They're going to be on SportsCenter. They're going to be able to reach new homes and reach new heights, and that's a great thing. So, no, UConn is not bad for the sport. If anything, it's the greatest thing to happen to women's college basketball in a long time. And it should be appreciated that 20-plus years of greatness has been in women's college basketball for this long. That's my take on it. We're going to move on to our other topic. We're going to talk about the travel ban. And we're going to start with Matt because I know he had a lot to say about this one. So go on, Matt.
First of all, you have to have some type of conscience to for this travel to understand. Let me back up. We knew, everybody was warned about this man. This man was trouble from the jump. This man that is the president now, we as Americans were forewarned. Not last year, not the year before, but this is a matter of 10s, 20, if not 30, 40 years. We knew what this man was, we knew what this man is, and we knew what this man was going to be. With that being said, this travel ban, I understand you want to be tough against, terrorists and everything else, which I understand as an American. But you have to have at least some common sense or something of the matter to understand the fact that what he just did, you just literally screwed everybody. You're not just screwing immigrants and refugees, you just screwed Americans who are literally working overseas, i.e. translators, doctors, missionaries, athletes, you name it. You screwed everyone, all because they're in a country that really had literally to zero, not much threat to America. Oh wait, but the countries that is in that same area that is now on that list, they've had either. And I agree with the fact that Trump has had some type of business dealings there, and also the fact that we've been attacked by those various countries at one point or another. And you're telling me Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, and the Somalia and the like, you're going to have a 4-month travel ban. I think it is a knee-jerk. It may be a knee-jerk reaction to everybody else, but it's a human rights thing. It's about human decency. Yes, you want to be tough on immigration reform and refugees, but this is a land. First of all, let's cut to the chase. Native Americans were here first. Okay, Europeans came over due to religious persecution or something of the matter, and pretty much stole the land. Then we as black folk came over by force. We didn't want to be here, and and everybody kept coming over. So yes, this is a land of former slaves, immigrants, natives, even some refugees, and you're telling me you're going to shut the border down over drugs, crime, law and order. I could go on forever about this issue. I mean, it's not just the refugees. This is not just about the border wall. You just opened up the Dakota pipeline and everything. This isn't. Everybody knew what this man is, what this man was, and the people that he surrounded himself with. Now you see the damage that was done. Now you see what happened for 40 some odd percent of people does not vote. This is what happens when you finally wake up and realize, excuse my French, we're in a whole heap of trouble. You knew what this man was. You knew what this man is. And now it's here. Yes, the jokes do write themselves, don't get me wrong. But now it's like, you know what? If we are supposed to be helping our fellow man in doing what the Bible says, to love our neighbors, and love our neighbors, love our enemies, blah, 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 shutting down your borders the way you do and banning travelers from those countries listed is the worst travesty you can do, not only as an American, but also as a human being. You're screwing not just refugees, but fellow Americans that work in those countries. Like I said, doctors, lawyers, translators, and any other occupation that you can list that works in those said countries, including government employees. Screwing those people over is the last thing you could do, and you make a lot more enemies that way. I'm going to shut my mouth because I could talk about this for another 20 minutes very passionately.
This is a very interesting topic. When I heard about it, I was immediately intrigued, and I think it's important to note. So I think when people are talking about this, um, they bring up the fact that it's only 7 countries, that are part of this so-called Muslim ban. And they only represent these 7 countries only represent 12% of the world's Muslims. That's a fair, that's fair to point out. All right. Um, and but the other thing is, you know, other countries such as Saudi Arabia, um, and a few other Muslim countries that you think would be on the list are not on the list. Um, and the other thing is, people, they bring up 12%. It's only 12% of the world's Muslim. It's not a Muslim ban. Okay, so I'm actually looking at this article on PolitiFact, and it says the order does not specifically bar Muslims. It's like, what do you mean? It doesn't specifically bar Muslims. It says it only applies to citizens of Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. And I'm like, okay, those are Muslim countries. He has specifically barred them from getting visas from those countries. So he's effectively banned Muslims from those countries for 120 days from coming into the United States. I don't understand what people don't understand about that. Like, it's a Muslim ban on Muslims from those 7 countries. And now we have people who are, I saw a story on, I think it was CNN, she's a Stanford PhD student, and she was detained essentially for 6 hours or so, because they had to pat her down. They actually put her in handcuffs at one point. They're questioning her and interrogating as if assuming that she's not a terrorist. They're assuming that she is first, and they're going to interrogate her to figure out that she's not a terrorist. That she has no, or she doesn't sympathize with ISIS or any Islamic extremist organization. But I don't think that we should be surprised by this. I mean, it's actually, ironically, this is much less than what President Trump said that he was going to do. During the campaign, he called for a total and complete, word for word. He said, I want to enforce a total and complete shutdown in the United States, and he's only banned, Muslims from 7 countries. So from one standpoint, there are certain, because this is not just something, it is a human rights issue, but on the other hand, it's an issue where people don't understand Islam. I think from one perspective, if you really look at what the Quran, Islam is a fairly, I won't say violent, but it is a fairly religion. There, if you're really following what the Quran says, you are called as a Muslim to essentially force your religion upon others. And another point, I think we have to make a distinction between Muslims in the U.S. and Muslims in the Middle East. I think there's a lot of Muslims here that are, and it's predominantly Black Muslims, who are kind of, they're more, they'd be more along the lines of what Malcolm X, stood for as a Muslim. They're more, for Black empowerment, that type of thing, and they do hold to the Muslim faith. not as stringently as those who are from the Middle East, from I think there's some like countries over in the Middle East, 30 or 35 or Muslim countries. So if you make that distinction, I think it makes it more clear. The distinction between how people hold to their Islamic faith, and there is some truth to the fact that acts of terrorism have been done by many Muslim countries, over there on other Muslim country upon other Muslim country, or Muslim country upon another Middle Eastern country, or Muslims from let's say Saudi Arabia or Iran or Iraq, coming over to the U.S. and committing a terroristic attack. Go back to 9/11. You had the thing in San Bernardino, which turned out to be people who were ISIS sympathizers. So there is some truth to this narrative that if you allow people from these countries to come over, that there is going to be bad people in the bunch. That ISIS is sending over. That they're in these refugee groups. They're kind of sticking ISIS sympathizers in there, and so you're going to have ISIS sympathizers in the U.S. And it's like, okay, yeah, but okay, who's? I mean, more and more we're having more white Muslims. So who's to say that somebody coming over from England, just as a student, who wants to go to school, is not an ISIS sympathizer and commit some crazy, terroristic attack. And I think there's just a level of inconsistency of how we treat Muslims. There was, I think recently, I think it was 2 days or 3 days ago in Canada, there were 6 Muslims killed. I saw on Facebook somebody posted something like along the lines of, if Christians that were killed in Canada, everybody would be posting the Canadian flag all over Facebook. But 6 Muslims are killed, and nobody's supporting Muslims. We stand with Islam or something like that. To that effect on Facebook. So it's a very, like Matt was saying, this is definitely a human rights issue, because you're essentially saying that people are not allowed to come into the United States, and many of these people are United States citizens, and can't get back. And people have family members in the U.S. and can't get to their family members. Like I mentioned, the PhD student, she was doing her dissertation work in Sudan and couldn't get back over. Now, eventually, she was able to get back over because they determined that she was not a terroristic threat. But the fact that she had to go through all of that is nonsense. Like, really, guys? I think the way to solve this issue is not to ban Muslims or not to ban people from certain countries, but to have something where, some system where, for and this would be for everybody, not just Muslims or people of Middle Eastern descent. Come to the airport, they have your name in the system. They type your name into the system. If you're not on that list of, like on the no-fly list or whatever they call it, you're good to go. Or you're not on, America's Most Wanted, or whatever, the number of lists that the government has. If you're not on that list, you're good to go. Like, it shouldn't be where somebody comes into the airport and they have to be detained, handcuffed, and interrogated to come to the country where they were born in, of Middle Eastern descent, or happen to be a Muslim. Like, that's nonsense. But that's my 2 cents. I'll let Kylan get in.
Yes, I'm just going to read a little bit, quick excerpt of a part of his law. So this part of the executive order that I'm about to read is Section 5, subsection E. Notwithstanding the temporary suspension imposed pursuant to subsection A of this section, the Secretaries of State and Homeland Security may jointly determine to admit individuals to the United States as refugees on a case-by-case basis, in their discretion, but only so long as they determine that the admission of such individuals as refugees is in the national interest, including when the person is a religious minority in his country of nationality, facing religious persecution when admitting the person would enable the United States to conform its conduct to a pre-existing international agreement, or when the person is already in transit and denying admission would cause undue hardship and it would not pose a risk to the security or welfare of the United States. Now I want y'all to marinate on that while I run through some things that I know about how we screen refugees and tell you how I arrived at this fact that this ban makes no sense, right? So, now I am not a refugee. None of us are refugees. We're all natural born citizens on this podcast. But there are articles and it's well documented because it's on the State Department's website what it takes and what the vetting process is like to become a refugee. Now, it should be noted, and I know this because I just wrote an article about that. WatsonSportsTaste.com. Another one in the span of two topics. but so this is what happens, right? So each person that wants to come in this country that's not a natural born citizen, if they make it past the initial screening process, right? They get an interview, a face-to-face interview with an FBI, State Department, CIA representative, one or the other, right? So then they go through that initial interview. Then they have another interview. So they have at least 5 interviews face-to-face with FBI agents, CIA agents, agents from the State Department, agents from Homeland Security, and they also get interviewed by the UN, right? So after that initial phone-to-phone, face-to-face interview is done, all 5 of those, all 5 to 6, or how many the government needs to make sure that this person is good enough to make it through the first process, to the first stage of the process, right? Then after that, just like you do if you have to work with kids or work for the government, they take your fingerprint. Because if you're a terrorist or whatever, you can change your face, you can change your facial features, you can change your body features, but you can't change your fingerprints. So you go through your fingerprints. And the fingerprints go through, and I tell people this every day, and people are like, every time I've been telling people this for like the past week and a half, and everybody's all like, "Oh, you're just a libtard. How do you know all this?" Blah 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 blah. Well, if you Google it, it's a well documented fact, right? So they go through the FBI database, they go through the CIA database, they go through the UN database, they go through the Interpol database, they go through every database known to man that has been created to find terrorists, right? And so if they make it through all that, right? Now bear in mind, this process takes 10 to 24 months to get refugees, right? And less than 24%, not less than 24, less than 1% of the global population is deemed worthy enough to be refugees into this country, right? So under Obama, right, the record was 86,000 people. And that was in September of 2016. So that was last year, 86,000 people. Before that, it ranged from anywhere as low as 50 to 70,000 people in those 7 years. So it wasn't like Obama was just opening up the borders saying, "Come on down, y'all," from anybody from all 7 of these countries, right? And the record shows, because you can also look this up because it's on the State Department stuff too, that the highest number of refugees don't even come from Syria. They don't come from any of these countries that he's banning people from. The highest number of refugees we get come from the Congo, right? Last year, and the second highest number was 12,000 refugees that Obama let in this year. So out of all those Syrian refugees and out of all this bluster that you hear people like Trump and the Republicans say, "Oh, Obama opened the borders so people can come from Syria and come and take us over and shoot us and bomb us. And they got y'all believing that there's secret ISIS agents everywhere. Now, let's be real, right? Trey mentioned the San Bernardino stuff and all this other terrorist stuff that has happened, right? Let's make no mistake about it. The last successful terrorist attack to be carried out on U.S. soil was in 9/11. Most of those terrorists, 15 of them to be exact, came from Saudi Arabia. One came from Qatar, which isn't on the list, and the other one came from the United Arab Emirates, another country that just so happens to not be on the list. And another one came from Jordan. And we'll never put Jordan on the list because Jordan is one of our allies. So you have that. The San Bernardino people were people that came over here from Pakistan, another country that's not on the list. And they were good until the last couple of years, 2014 and 2013, when they were radicalized. The Fort Hood shooter, a soldier who was radicalized, not in the military, not at home, but through websites that he found. The radicalization doesn't happen. We have to realize that we are in a different world. The radicalization of terrorists doesn't happen through the screening process. The problem with the vetting process that we have is the vetting process doesn't take into account that you can be radicalized once you get over here, right? And that's what's happened to our last people. Dylan Roof, he was radicalized from as soon as he came out of his mother's womb. He was radicalized and radicalized and radicalized and radicalized. But he didn't really become a real radical and a real terrorist until the last couple of months before he walked into a church in Charleston, South Carolina, and started shooting because he was on the internet. We need to understand that it's the internet that's radicalizing these people, right? And since we're not banning the internet, we need to stop. And people, Trump supporters, non-Trump supporters, y'all got to recognize that the threat, ISIS is not a threat to us. ISIS's rhetoric is a threat to us. ISIS in itself can't reach over here. They're agents and young people and people that are over here already that can be radicalized by their videos on the internet. It's not even them. So y'all worried about sleeper agents. There are no sleeper agents. Anybody that becomes a sleeper agent that gets radicalized, everybody will say, everybody that commits a terrorist act, they'll tell you they were radicalized in the last couple months, the last couple weeks before they actually did the attack. How did they get radicalized? They got radicalized through the internet. The people that did, the Russians that did the Boston Marathon bombing, radicalized on the internet. Guys, I know you think this is Europe. I know you want to protect. I know you got some false sense of security that makes you think that everybody that's not American is a threat. No. Statistically, you're more likely to die from what's in your refrigerator than you are from an Islamic terrorist, right? Because statistically, the number one killer of Americans of all races and of all nationality is heart disease. And y'all not managing y'all refrigerator. So why you managing people from 7 countries you don't even know? Right? See, this is what happens. I hate this. I've said before that our current president is a more rich, more rhetoric spewing Representative Joe McCarthy reborn. He's gonna have everybody so fearful of sleeper ISIS agents that we're gonna wind up putting Muslims in concentration camps. The way this is headed, that's where this is headed. Now, luckily, and one of the brilliant things about this podcast being a little bit late is now I'm able to report, for those of you that don't know or listen to this later, that a couple of judges have temporarily stopped this ban nationwide, right? So now people can come on in whether they have a green card or not. And as a Christian, right, and after I read this again, I'm about to bring it back to that section of his executive order that I read. Excuse me. Now, I know that Christians, especially in the Middle East, they're persecuted. ISIS has been running rampant, persecuting Christians over there and everything else. But my brothers and sisters, right? I never wanted to be said that, and this is what made me think this is a Muslim ban, because now we're not even talking about that. Just in that subsection that I read to you, you heard it said that out of these 7 countries, we will allow minority religions in those countries to come through after we vet them, but with no problem. And they said that we will not send him back, send these people back if it was determined that they're in transit, and sending them back will cause an unnecessary hardship. Now, I pray for my brothers and sisters in Syria and everywhere else that are facing persecution at the hands of ISIS, excuse me, and anything else that's running around threatening Christians in the Middle East. But for real, if you're banning everybody from these countries and you really want this ban to be equal, then you shouldn't be saying, oh, but Christians are okay. Because that's not only discrimination, but that violates our Constitution, which says our government should have no national religion. The reason this country was founded was it was founded by immigrants who were fleeing a national religion. So I'm going to let y'all get back in here while I take a break. Y'all go ahead.
I would say, look, it goes back to the. I agree. I'm glad it went back to the Constitution, because first of all, let's back up. Yes, there isn't a official language. There isn't an official religion. There isn't official anything. And for good reason, because the Constitution made it so in a certain way. Now, to the reason for the freedom of religion and assembly and everything else is because of those very same reasons. Religious persecution. And we have the freedom of speech because you had tyrannical rules and rulers and everything else suppressing people. So you had the right to speak your mind. You had the right to press and everything else. Now, with this being said, you have a man who is pretty much violating the First Amendment in front of your faces, and you have a Republican base who is trying to silence that and pretty much violate the First Amendment outright. And it's a human rights issue. If you want power that much, if you really crave for this power, for shame of you, because it shows how greedy you really are. So, because law aside, it's about human rights at the end of the day. Yes, I agree with the fact that you have more chance of being killed by a heart attack than you are getting killed by terrorists. Honestly, you have a better chance of getting shot. You have a better chance of getting shot through lightning versus encountering a terrorist. So it's like this is like Kylo said, this is McCarthyism all over again with the Red Scare and putting Japanese into concentration camps and pretty much telling Jews, okay, we got too much of y'all, go somewhere else. We're repeating history. No one has not learned from it yet. If we continue to live in perpetual fear, then we're in for a rude awakening, because this is not where this country is supposed to go. We're supposed to be a strong country and this, that, and the third, but we're living out of fear through ignorance. And that's deadly. That is very deadly. Not just externally, but also internally. So we have to start really understanding ourselves as a people, as a country, and as a whole, because we're killing ourselves, believe it or not.
Go ahead, Trey.
Um, yeah, it's it's a it's a crazy situation, and I wholeheartedly disagree with it. Um, perspective, this executive order is clearly in opposition to what the Bible says. It's in Leviticus, I think, where it talk. It says you shall treat a stranger as if they're native among you. Um, and clearly, the United States does not know how to do that. You go back to when the colonists came over. The the Native Americans treated them right, and then they bring these, they rape and pillage. All right, so the colonists have land. All right, okay. And then you had slavery. So you had foreigners, Africans, over in the U.S. It's now forcefully brought into the U.S. And treated as trash. And as the years go by, more and more people immigrate. You had during I guess it was the 1800s. I guess you had a lot of Asians migrated, and they were doing a lot of work over in the West. Doing gold mining and all that type of stuff. And so immigration has been something. I think, in my opinion, I think you guys would probably agree that we are a nation of immigrants. Immigration from many different countries, Mexico, countries in Asia, Europe, the Middle East, is what makes the United States great. A lot of people always talk about how, they don't like the fact, they don't like the idea of the U.S. being a melting pot, or a melting pot. I call it more of a salad bowl in terms of culture. I think that's what makes the United States great. And for Donald Trump to I to specifically target Muslims, like, think about it this way. You can do this with Muslims because they're terrorists. But who's to say that you can't do this with other nationalities? But it just, politically, it doesn't make sense, because there's a number of countries where you're actually probably more likely to have a terrorist, or someone who's a terroristic sympathizer or a radical Islamist come from a country like Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, and those countries are not on the list. And then it morally, it doesn't line up. And also, like what Kylan is saying, based on the wording of the executive order, what's actually going on is not matching up. Or what the executive order says and what's actually happening is not matching up. They're saying that they're not going to block people from coming into the United States, if they're already in transit, and it will cause, an extraordinary hardship. And many of these cases it is. People are coming over with their families, they're trying to get back to their family, and, they're sent back. They had a situation at the Philly airport last week with this. A family was sent back to Sudan, I believe it was. So it's like things just aren't adding up. I mean, he signs the executive order like at a bad time. Like, if you're gonna sign something of this magnitude, where you're banning literally millions of people from 7 different countries in the Middle East, like, you can't just sign that. Like, literally, he signs that, and literally people were immediately, like, not allowed to come into the United States, and they're like people are mid-flight and are finding out about this Muslim ban. And So it's like, what are we like? What are we supposed to do when we land, that type of thing? This does include green card holders. It's just a lot of holes in the executive order. So it just doesn't make sense politically, and it doesn't make sense morally.
True story, man. I'm gonna wrap this topic up, just because we're gonna be here all night talking about this, but we gotta move on to other topics. But just in general, right? This in no way am I coming at anybody who supported Trump, and there's a lot of people, even some of his supporters, don't even support this ban. So just the way it was done, the way it's worded, and other things. I understand protecting your borders, but you could have boosted security at airports. You could boost the vetting process, but I don't really know how you make a vetting process that doesn't really allow more than 50, 60,000 people over here. Like, you could increase the vetting process to include internet radicalization. You could hire more border security controls. And we didn't even talk about the wall. It's just that the ban was of such magnitude that people forgot about the wall. But we haven't forgotten about that wall either. And just the different things that he's done. And just keep fighting, guys. I'm glad to see a lot of people are fighting this. I'm glad to see that the ban hasn't even been out a week yet, because he signed it last Friday, but it didn't go into effect until Saturday. So it's almost a week. In another couple minutes, it'll be a week since this ban. And now 2 federal judges have said, nah, we're going to stop this ban. And eventually, I think it's going to end up in the Supreme Court, decided before he could get his nominee in there to break the tie. Just keep fighting, guys. I'm vehemently against this ban because I don't see a reason for it. Just the logic that we were all fed, that I need to make the vetting process more extreme. And it's disingenuous to say I need to make the vetting process more extreme when and I tell everybody, don't take my word for it. Go on the State Department's website, look at the refugee vetting process, and see that it includes everything that I laid out for you in my soliloquy on it, right? It includes a lot of things that most people don't know it includes. And there's really not that many refugees that are allowed to have green cards, are allowed to have visas. So, and I've told people this, whether they agree with me or not. I've said, you can't make something that's already tougher. But we're going to move on. So we're moving right along and Matt probably will be back. We're going to move on to Serena and her 23 titles. So the question is on Serena. She won 23. Congratulations to Serena Williams on winning her Jordan year and amount of titles, 23. So how many more titles will she win? Also talk about the matchup. I know most of us didn't watch it because it was on at 3 a.m. last week. But go ahead, Trey. Go ahead, talk about that, if you would. Okay, well, go ahead, Matt. You first, then.
23 titles. How many she has in her? Well, as many as you want. I mean, put it this way. She's in very great shape. I hope she goes for 30. Other than that, the phenomena that surrounds not just Serena, but the Williams sister in particular. I know Venus can't play as much because of her condition. But with that being said, she is leaving an imprint on the sport of tennis. So to ask how many more championships will she win? It's many she won. It's many she won. The sky is the limit as far as Serena is concerned. You know, she has she has literally put herself in a position to where though she can she can she can uh hold on.
Trey, go ahead if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. But yeah, like, I mean, I've never been a huge tennis fan, but it's crazy. Like, I mean, that's a lot because she has 23 doubles titles, but she also has, I believe she has 70 some singles titles, which is crazy. And then I don't know about Venus, but she's only, I mean, Serena's only 35, so I mean, it doesn't look, and she doesn't look like she's showing any signs of slowing down. So, um, I can't pick a number, how many more titles she'll win. But I mean, she doesn't seem to be slowing down. And I mean, Venus can't play as much, but I mean, it doesn't seem like she's lost a step in terms of her ability to play. She just can't play as much because of her condition. So I mean, and tennis is not necessarily. I mean, tennis, you can play tennis, at an older age. I mean, like, you do have to be very in shape, but I mean, at 35, and I think Venus is like 2 years older. Like, who knows? What's next?
And so yeah. Serena Williams won her 23rd title, her Jordan year in titles, in singles titles, 23 titles. And, like they said, I can't really put a number on Serena Williams because, that'd just be impossible. I know the record is 24. So she needs one more title and she'll break the record. No, she'll be tied for the record. She actually needs two more titles to break the record. But I'll give her at least 25. I'll say by the time she ends her career, especially if she keeps it going like she said for the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years, if she keeps winning a title every year, so that'd be 6 titles. So 4 to 6 titles, and she's at 23 right now. I think she could win 27 to 30 titles, and if she does that, that would, she's already the greatest tennis player ever, man or woman to me. But that would put her in, like I said, my top 3 athletes because if she can win 30 titles in 20 some years, that's an amazing feat. I can't even, and to be as culturally significant as she is, we talked about this last week, but everything that she went through, her and her sister, a sport that, African Americans usually don't dominate, and it's great to see. And she's opened up doors for a lot of people, black, white, and of any color, and it's great to see that. And like I said with UConn, and I'll say it again here, we need to appreciate this greatness because we may not see another 20 plus year dominance like this again in tennis. So definitely appreciate it, and yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Matt, I don't know if you're there or you figured out your problems, but go ahead if you want to finish up what you were saying. Matt, no, I guess not. All right, we're gonna move on to Super Bowl predictions. I'm gonna start with mine. So as I told Trey when I saw him on Wednesday, man, my mind is saying Patriots, but my heart is saying Falcons, and I think I'm gonna go with my mind on this one. But I wouldn't be mad if I'm wrong and the Falcons win. But I think it's gonna be the Patriots. And if you're gonna tie me down and make me pick a score, 34-31 New England. Go ahead, Trey, because I don't know if Matt got his problems fixed yet.
My life is put together. But for a football score,
Yeah, you could also talk about Sarita too, since you cut off.
the hell with it. No, but in terms of this football game, look, I'm saying let's cut to the chase. I would love to see Atlanta win the Super Bowl because I can't stand New England right now because now I'm hearing the fact that somebody quote unquote took the Atlanta Falcons playbook by accident. Okay, so with that being said, and this is nothing new because it's the Patriots and they're gonna find some way to cheat and win. I know I'm hating, don't care. I think it's going to be a very closely contested game. I might say score wise, it may be 28-27. That's what I'm looking at right now. As we're looking at two really good quarterbacks right now, and like I said, you playing the machine, and the Falcon defense. I'll be honest with you, has really surprised me as far as holding opponents down, getting to the quarterback, and their offense with Julio Jones. Proved to me that Sanu can beat you too. You can shut down Julio Jones all you want, but Sanu can beat you. The running game can beat you. So I'm impressed with what Atlanta has accomplished, and I'm gonna say Atlanta's gonna win this game, 28-27. I really think Atlanta's gonna win this game, but we shall see.
I told Kylan on I'm kind of on the same boat as Kylan. I want the Falcons to win because and this is mostly from the perspective that the Patriots just keep cheating and keep getting caught but get away with it. So I can't root for the Patriots to win, and I want the Falcons to win. And it's as well as Matt Ryan and that defense is playing right now. I think what's going to happen is I think this is only if this happens. This is how this game will play out. If not, I'll get to that. But I think if the Patriots are able to run the ball, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game where the Patriots run the ball, and they're going to keep the ball away from Matt Ryan. But Matt Ryan and that offense is still very, very good. They're the number one scoring offense in the league versus for the first time I think in NFL history we have the number one scoring offense and the number one scoring defense in the league going up against each other in the Super Bowl. But I think if the Patriots are able to run the ball and keep the ball out of Matt Ryan's hand, I think we're going to see a 24-21 game, maybe a 27-21 type of game. Now, if the Falcons defense is able to come out and stop the run and maybe force Tom Brady into a mistake, which typically does not happen. But if they're able to do that and maybe put some pressure on Tom Brady, I think it goes the other way actually, and I think it turns into a semi blowout, maybe like a 31-17 type of thing. So I think will happen is that the Patriots will be able to run the ball on the Falcons defense because although the defense is playing well right now, they're playing well above expectations, and they're a very inexperienced defense. They have the most rookie starters on their defense, and I think that going up against a very experienced Patriots team doesn't mesh well together, and I think they'll run. Bill Belichick is going to call a great game on offense, and the Patriots are going to win, a close game like a 21-17, 24-17 game. and Tom Brady will become greatest Super Bowl. I mean, this greatest quarterback of all time, and be the first to win 5 rings.
All right, I've got nothing to add on any of that. I've said our piece, so we'll move right along to guys. And I know this is a laughing matter because we're all Eagles fans, but would you trade for Tony Romo if you were a team looking for a quarterback? Go ahead, Matt.
Hell no. Why? For what? End of his career? I mean, no. Just no. Tony Romo's had a very good career. Don't get me wrong. Very good career. Unfortunately for the Dallas Cowboys. He at the tail end of his career, and he's good for basically a backup role, if not a serviceable number one, until someone else better comes along. I honestly, if a situation that is good for him comes along, and and his play elevates because of said situation, then I think he should take advantage of it. Other than that, look, you'd be a fool to trade him for a draft pick. You'd be a fool, a bona fide fool. But if you're the Cleveland Browns, you'd do it. But hell no. That's all I gotta say on that one. Just no.
Hell to the no, to the no, no, no. No. To be honest with you, I probably would not trade for Tony Romo, but it depends. To be honest, it really depends what type of team you are. A team that it would make sense for him to go to would be a team like Denver, where they wouldn't have to rely on him to carry the load offensively because they have a solid running game, and their defense is an all-time great defense, really. With Von Miller and Aqib Talib, and that defense is just a very great defense. So that'd be a great situation for him. The question is, what would you give up for Tony Romo? Because I mean, as much as I dislike the Cowboys, when Tony Romo is healthy, he's a good quarterback. I mean, there's times, and people always bring up that he's not very good in the clutch. That's only partially true because, I mean, if you look at the stats, he actually is fairly good in the fourth quarter. It's just in certain moments, his mistakes are magnified because he only made, he only won one playoff game, and then he's supposed to be this great franchise quarterback and hasn't done anything really. I mean, every time. I mean, with the exception of maybe 2-3 years, like he's always had solid players around him, a solid running game, that type of thing, and just has not produced, whether it be due to injury or him flopping towards the end of the season. But the question really is, I don't think whether you would trade for Tony Romo, because if I'm a team like a Denver or, I mean, really Denver is really the only example I can think of right now. I say, yeah, to take a veteran quarterback, who with good weapons on the team and a very good defense could probably succeed. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, I could see Denver winning a Super Bowl if Tony Romo is healthy on that team, and that's if he stays healthy. That's the only. Like I said, the biggest question though is, on the other hand, what do you give up for Tony Romo? Like for Denver, it's like, do you give up a draft pick? You give up like a 6th round pick or something like that, and maybe like, a depth guy or something like that. Because I mean, at 35 or 30, I think he'll be 36 by the time next season starts. Like, what do you give up for a 36-year-old quarterback who's injury prone and not just any injury, like like broken bones, back problems, that thing. Like, so it's really a mystery. I would trade for Tony Romo if I'm a team like Denver, but I don't know what I would give up for him.
Yes. I definitely would not trade for Tony Romo. I will wait until Dallas releases him and then try and get him. I would get him through free agency. That way I haven't given up much for him. Now, it makes sense for a team
I
like
can't see
them.
Dallas releasing him, though, because of that contract. I mean, 'cause they still take, if they release him, they still have to pay, they still have they take a penalty of his contract.
Right, but they said it's very highly likely that with the development of Dak, that Tony will either force them to trade him or release him. So we'll see. But I'm not going to trade anything more than a fourth round pick for Tony Romo. And outside of that, it's really only probably about 3 teams that need him. Not the Oakland Raiders, the Houston Texans, the Broncos, and probably the Jets. So those are really his three things right there. So he really has limited options. He can really only go to 2 teams that he's valuable enough to win a championship with. Is like I said, the Texans and the Broncos. So we'll see. I wouldn't trade for him personally, but I think that'd be good for them, for one of those teams to do. So moving right on to our next topic, we're going to talk about. We're going to leave one of those for later, but we're going to switch gears to college basketball on the men's side. What's going on with Villanova? For those who don't know, Villanova now is ranked number 4. They came off a loss to, who did they lose to? I think they lost to Maryland. They have a loss to Maryland. It's their second loss of the season. So what do you think? Or a second loss in conference play. So what do you think of that? Let me know. Go ahead, Trey. You start.
Well, they've lost. You're right. They've lost 2 games. They're 21-2 now. They lost to Marquette, and who else have they lost to?
Butler.
But Butler, right? Who are both? I don't know if Marquette is ranked. I don't believe Marquette is ranked. But Butler at the time was ranked, and they're still ranked. I believe they've actually moved up in the ranking since they beat Villanova. I think they were 18 at the time, and I think they're maybe 16 right now. So typically when you're picking a consensus number 1 team in the nation, usually you're looking for that team that's undefeated or only has 1 loss. But I think that's starting to change. I think because you more and more you're seeing teams. I think things are being a little bit less competitive actually. There's no team that's just like straight up dominating, and just blowing teams out by 60 and 70 points. In men's college ball, at least, in contrast to women's basketball. So I don't think there's anything wrong with Villanova. They only have 2 losses. And they're on track, to be a 30-win team. So, or like a 29-win team, and they're still probably a favorite to win the national championship. So I can't imagine that. Unless they flop towards the end of the season, I can't imagine them not being a favorite to win, to repeat, especially with just how well they play together, the coaching of Jay Wright. A lot of times in any sport, after you win a championship, there's always a lot of pressure to win again. So you a lot of teams end up having that championship hangover. Two of the greatest the greatest example usually you see is in football. You go back to the Giants after they beat the Patriots both times, really. And then just last year, we had the Panthers, who had a major hangover. Now, towards the end of the season, they picked up, but I don't know if you can. For Villanova, I don't know if you can call these two losses hangover. They were both like close. Marquette, I think, was a buzzer-beating loss, and Butler was like a really close game that Butler, I think, pulled away in the last like minute or like 50 seconds. So like, I'm not worried about their two losses that they have. They're still fourth in the nation and could probably move back up into the rankings to maybe 2 or maybe even go back to 1, and they're still first in the Big East.
Those two losses in particular, really will not hurt Villanova too much, honestly, because those are two tough games. Now, as far as the championship hangover is concerned, I don't think there is one. I really don't think there is one. I don't. With the way Jay Wright got his players going, he's making sure there is no championship hangover. Making sure that, look, last year was last year, and you gotta put in this perspective, like, teams are going to give you the best, and he said that they're going to give you their best. They're not going to take any play off. They're going to take anything off because they're going to do everything they can to knock you off. You're the national championship. You're national champions. So they're going to give you everything they got. So I think Villanova has stepped up to the challenge every game. Their play, has been pretty consistent. But other than that, I don't see, as far as a championship hangover, I don't see one. I really don't see one. I mean, getting back to win it, to do it again is hard, particularly in this day and age, and particularly in this time of sports but this is not the days of UCLA and John Wooten. This is not. Nowadays, if you get back-to-back, you'd be lucky. I think Florida did that, but I really do see
06, 07. I had to throw my little 2 cents in there. I'm a Gators fan.
I hate the Gators too, but yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. You have that target on your back, and as a coach, you know that. Players know that. So you can't, psych yourself up so much as to say, okay, we gotta like turn it. We gotta do this, that. You still have to play your game, but you have to, stay on top of your game, stay on top of everything. And I think Jay Wright really has these guys where they need to be. I think there was one game where they won, but he made it clear the fact that he was not satisfied how his team played. And that showed me, like, you know what? He understands the fact, yes, we're champs, but we could play a lot better. Well, yet, because there are some games, I think there are some things that can be fine-tuned, that can be cleaned up. I haven't seen much of Nova games lately, but as a coach, you know those things, you see those things, you want to stay on top of it. And I think Jay Wright is doing that in particular, but I don't see championship hangover. I don't see it. I don't read it. They're about their business, and we'll see what happens as we march into March Madness. I mean, ranking don't mean jack squat, honestly. I mean, you're top 5, okay, fine, but to be knocked out from 1 to 4, for me, pressure's off. The pressure's off me. I just gotta make sure my guys are ready to play every night to step up to the challenge. Even though you may be ranked number 4, you are still going to give you everything they got, guns a-blazing. So this team has to be ready. Teams got to know what to do in these situations because you cannot take a play off and hope nothing happens because they're gonna take teams will take full advantage.
Whew. Yeah, 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 man. So I definitely don't take stock in any of these losses that Villanova's had. I think that these losses come when you play familiar opponents, and in the Big East, it's kind of like the NFC East. Everybody beats up on each other, but eventually one or two teams rise from the conference, and we'll see. I definitely don't think anything's wrong with Villanova. I just think that they have a less good quality bench without the people that they're missing, and definitely it's worth keeping an eye on. So we're gonna go down right along with one that I don't get tired of arguing is um, LeBron versus Charles Barkley. Whose side are you on? Who you rolling with? Go ahead, Matt.
Oh boy, look, let me tell you something. It's silly. It really is silly. I, I'm gonna have to take. I'm gonna have to. If I want to pick a side, so to speak, I have to run with Charles. He said, wait, one thing about Charles Barkley, he's gonna tell it like it is. He's not gonna hold nothing back. And if you can't accept who this man is, that is Charles Barkley. I mean, there's some things I don't agree with. I mean, I met the man. I met the man personally, and he's a very good guy and everything else. But the one thing I will admit, he will tell you the truth, and he will not hold a grudge or anything back. He will not hold anything back. And you know, and I agree with him like this. Look, you're the champs, and I said this earlier with my Villanova. You're the champs. Everything they got, they're gonna throw gun to everything, gun to blazing, and you're complaining about the fact that your team is going through a slump. It's an 82 game season, and you're complaining. I will call you. Well, honestly, I'll call him out too, on the fact that you act like you're my age. I'm 32 years old. Me and the same, roughly the same age. And you're telling me you're mad. Like, yes, you're mad about the fact that your team is not performing at a level it's supposed to be. Okay, fine. The Sixers are playing better than you, unfortunately, but still, you're going to gripe and complain to management about the way your team. You know what? No one cares. Cry me a river. I'm like this. You are the franchise player. You can only control what you control in the court. Your job is to be wherever it's supposed to be on the court, whether it be a field general or wherever the case may have you. Your job is to make your players better. And unfortunately, you're not doing that. I did see that game. The last game I saw was against OKC. Honestly, I'm not. I'm like, look, your job is to win games. You are the champs. You came at 3-1 to beat Golden State, who was the best team in NBA history. You did that. Now you're the champs. You could rattle off 74 wins if you wanted to, but you're not going to. You did, and you know what? I'm sorry. I agree with Charles on the fact that he's calling you out, and the way LeBron is responding, it's pathetic. It's really pathetic, and it also shows to today's athletes, very sensitive, to the point overly sensitive. Like, he's not a hater. He's telling you the truth. If you understand Charles Barkley, the man, he's telling you the truth. So if you don't like it, well, that's tough things on you. But, why should you let outside interference or outside voices and the like get up under your skin? And that shows how tough you as a player really are. Because in my view, like this, you know what? Of course they're going to say something. Oh, well, I can only control what I can control. And that's within the locker room. That's within my team. And you let outside forces dictate that, then you are in a whole heap of trouble. So I'm with Charles on this one. Toughen up, man up. End of story.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Matt. I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I don't like, and if you watched that whole video where Charles said what he said, Shaq also commented. He said, "I agree with the sentiment. You know what LeBron's thinking about in terms of adding a playmaker. Really, he's asking for a backup point guard, a better backup point guard, because they don't really have a backup point guard. I mean, their backup point guard right now is Kay Felder, and he's not doing the job right now. But Shaq was essentially saying, fine, you want to add a playmaker, whatever. But he shouldn't have brought it to the media, and I agree with that. Which ironically is outside of what LeBron. LeBron is usually a very calm, cool, collected guy. He doesn't get into semantics with people going back. He's not that type of person. Every once in a while things will come up, but he's not the type of person to throw shots at people like he did Charles. Like he brought up, Charles Barkley's history with debt, showing up late for All-Star Weekend, that type of like he was throwing shots. I don't like that from LeBron. Because he's been, but that's aside from the fact that let's go back to, what was it, June? In June or May, whatever it was, the Cavs are down 3-1. It looks like LeBron's legacy is going to take a big hit, and the Warriors are going to win their second champion. They're going to repeat, right? And be hailed as the best team that ever, stepped foot on the court. Cavs come back, from the 3-1 deficit. Now the Cavs are the championship. The Cavs are the champions. Cleveland gets their first ring. LeBron gets his third ring. And coming into the season, the Cavs are expected to play like they're the champions. They're supposed to play, as a team. Their chemistry is at an all-time high. Kevin Love is playing at a much higher level than he was in the past. They're meshing together. Kyrie, is turning into a superstar. And then they go in this slump during January. Now, see, actually, let me go back before that. Over the offseason, after they win the championship, the Warriors add Kevin Durant, who is arguably the second best player in the league. Who do the Cavs add? They add Mike Dunleavy, who's, is not equivalent to adding Kevin Durant. Season comes around, they go in this slump during January. The way I see it is, I don't see this as LeBron reacting to the slump and complaining. What I see is LeBron notices that the team is not as good as they were at this point last year. And he notices what the Warriors are doing. They're 43-7 right now, and they added the second best player in the league. They have Kevin Durant. And the Cavs have not done anything aside from signing, a bench player who actually they just traded to get Kyle Korver. They didn't add anything to get better as a team. So from LeBron's standpoint, he's saying, look, the Warriors added Kevin Durant. Now, yes, I'm the greatest player, probably the greatest player that ever lived, maybe aside from Michael. But, I can't do everything. I can make my teammates better, but on offense, but I can't make them better defenders. You know, I can't make them not miss a shot. I can't make them, you know, clutch. You know, I can guard KD. You know, I can guard Steph, but I just can't do everything. You know, I can't. You know, there's 4 other people on the court, and so what LeBron is asking, he's not. He. It's not like he asked. He said, "Hey, let's go get. You know, let's go trade for a superstar. You know, let's go get Isaiah Thomas from the Celtics or something like that." You know, he's not asking for that. All he said is, "We need another playmaker off the bench." Saying LeBron is whining and blah blah blah. Yeah, LeBron is a whiner. Okay, LeBron is my favorite player in the league. Well, second favorite player. DeMarcus Cousins is my favorite player. But yeah, LeBron whines. But that's how the league is. You know, players whine. But LeBron has a legitimate concern. He's like, okay, we need to get better as a team, and we're not there yet. And our front office is not doing anything to solve that. And so this actually goes back to the first time LeBron was in Cleveland when they didn't do anything to help him out. And it seems like it's happening again, where LeBron, because I can imagine that LeBron had a conversation with Dan Gilbert and, you know, the rest of the front office saying, you know, we need to add something off the bench. And they probably said no, or said something along the lines of no, or weren't moving quick enough for LeBron. Because LeBron is one of the greatest competitors ever in any sport. And he wants to beat the Warriors. Like he's looking to be Michael Jordan in terms of his legacy. And I think what happened was, you know, he went to the front office. They kind of said no or weren't moving as fast. And so he brought it to the media, which I didn't necessarily agree with, but it worked. You know, there's been reports that they've been working out Lance Stevenson, Mario Chalmers, who was a former teammate of LeBron, and 2 other guys. But we hadn't heard any reports of this happening before LeBron, you know, brought this up. Now, as to the LeBron versus Charles Barkley, Matt, you're right. Like, Charles is gonna, you know, he's gonna say what he's gonna say. But I think LeBron went over the line in what he said, the words that he said, not necessarily coming back at Charles. But that's my point of view. I think LeBron has a right to be a little bit frustrated because the team is losing. I don't think he was being reactive to the fact that they were, like, he's not complaining because they're losing per se. He's reacting to the fact from the beginning of the season that he knew they weren't as good of a team as the Warriors, or as what the Warriors have. And he knows that, I mean, everybody knows it's going to be Warriors Cavs in the finals.
Go ahead, Matt.
But even though, I mean, I agree with part of your argument, but at the same time, my thing is simply this: it's how he handled the situation. It's the way he went about the situation. Yeah, he does need an extra point guard to it, but it's an organizational problem. It's like, look, honestly, and let me be honest with you, I don't think they should have gotten Kyle Korver in the first place. Yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion. They could have done better with getting a point guard or a backup point guard, but other than getting Korver off the bench. That's just my opinion. But other than that, you have.
But can we blame
said,
the front office's mistakes on LeBron?
No, I mean, you should. It's the front office outright. That's the problem, because you alluded to the fact that when he was there the first time around, and he asked for a similar, like, look, a similar issue, like, look, we need a certain player for this situation, and pretty much Cleveland hemming and hawing about the situation, and next thing you know, he took his talents to South Beach. Dan Gilbert's, I don't know what is with Dan Gilbert. I don't know, but the fact of the matter is, you know, the Warriors did one better. They got Kevin Durant, top 3, if not top 5 players in the world. pretty much stood pat, basically. Oh, yeah, Don Levy, yeah. Just look, in reality, you stood pat because you were happy that Cleveland won their first title since basically the Cleveland Indians in the 1950s. No, 1940s, excuse me. And you're telling me you're gonna stand pat again? This is what happened. You could have gotten better. You could have restructured some deals and bring in another player to maintain the run. But now you're in a slump. But it's an 82 basketball game season. You knew this was going to happen. The teams don't go through slumps, but it's how you get out of them. So Cleveland put themselves in this situation, and LeBron is pointing it out the way he's handling it. I don't agree with it, and pretty much Charles Barkley just called him out on it.
Okay, I'm gonna close this down, this topic down with this, right? So I think both are mutually exclusive at the same time, right? Now LeBron is definitely whining. He's bringing attention to a situation, to an injustice, right? The fact that they basically the only thing that changed that the Cleveland Cavaliers did to change the team was bring in Kyle Korver, right? Now that was a mistake. We talked about that. That was definitely a mistake, a front office mistake, big mistake. And LeBron James is frustrated. And maybe he talked to Dan Gilbert, maybe he didn't. But he's venting his frustrations. And Charles Barkley was very right to call him out on it, saying he was whining and he's the best player in the world and he needs to act like he won a championship last year. All true. But to question the man's competitive drive, yeah, I think that's why LeBron went off on him. Because LeBron can take anything else. Like he's been being berated by Skip Bayless all his NBA career, right? But as soon as Charles Barkley questions his competitive spirit and basically his balls when it comes to being on a basketball court, of course LeBron's going to react because LeBron understands that this is business. He understands Charles is paid to analyze, but sometimes commentators go too far. When he called Troy Aikman gay, and in this case, Charles Barkley went a little too far when he questioned LeBron's mental toughness on the basketball court. So he went a little far, and that's the crux of this argument. Now, whose side am I on in this? I guess I'm gonna be on LeBron's side because you can't question somebody's competitive spirit like that and then be mad when they reply. But LeBron is wrong for whining to the public. He should have just handled it behind the scenes and not try to put public pressure on the Cavaliers. Because, that just makes him look weak. And I know he wasn't thinking about that heat of the moment, emotion, and all that. But, sometimes it's better to air things out behind closed doors and not in front of cameras. And so that's the side. That's the topic. As you can see, we have very fierce topics, very fierce debates. And before we move on to our last couple of topics, I'm gonna let Matt come up on here and talk about what's been going on in the NHL, and let him talk up, and he'll be back, I guess. So we'll talk about the 76ers real quick. I will question to frame this around: is Embiid's bad knee a big deal or no big deal? Go ahead, Trey.
I don't think he has a bad knee. I think what happened was, I think he actually hurt his knee, and it healed up, whatever. Because if you think back to last Friday or Saturday, whenever that was, I think it was against. I can't think of who they were playing because I didn't watch the game, but he was running up and down the court, and I don't know I know you played sports before, but if you've ever had a knee contusion, like it's a painful thing. But you can, and it is something you can play through, but like it does bother you, like. But there was never a time where, like, when Joel Embiid is running up and down the court, like where it seemed like he was in pain or like maybe he limped a couple times. But I mean, during the game where he originally got injured, he came out and they kind of subbed him in and out. But after that, it's been what, 3 or 4 games, and he might not. I think they have a game tomorrow night versus the Heat, and he might not even play that game. So I think what's going on is, and Bryce, not Bryce, but Coach Brett Brown said, he said, I think they're going a little bit overboard. And we'll see what I got from that was not that he is going overboard with, protecting Joel Embiid in terms of injury. I think he was the front office under the bus, and mentioning that they're going overboard with Embiid, and the amount of time that they want Embiid to set. Because I don't believe I cannot imagine that Brett Brown would hold Joel Embiid out when he's healthy. Like, I feel like the front office is, they feel that they sense that the fans want the Sixers to win now. But if they win now, at least their draft pick won't mean anything. But I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. I feel like he's not injured anymore, and they're just holding him out because the front office still wants to lose. But it's clear to me that Brett Brown doesn't. And the other thing is, I can't imagine that, because he the one game where he played after he originally got injured, I can't imagine that, like, Joel Embiid, like, the way that they've been so they've overdone his minute restrictions and everything. I can't imagine that Joel Embiid just convinced them to let him play, after being injured and having, like, an injury that would take 1 to 2 weeks to heal. I can't imagine that he just convinced them to let him come on the court, and that's why I don't think he's injured. Like, they're just holding him out, so because they think that while he's on the court, or they know that while he's on the court, the Sixers have a better chance of winning. That's my opinion on that.
I also didn't watch that game against the Bucks when he injured himself. But from what I heard and from what I saw in the highlights from the game, it did look pretty bad. I'm going to need Joel to stop diving for balls. I respect the hustle and I respect the toughness, but I need you to stop diving for basketballs. You're too valuable to the franchise. So if you listen to this podcast, or anybody connected to him listen to this podcast, tell him to stop diving for the ball. I think I definitely agree with you, Trey, to a certain extent. I think that the front office is definitely being overly cautious with him, and rightfully so. They need to protect their investment. But I think that they've gone a little bit overboard. I think Embiid needs to play. Let him play. He's gonna have the whole All-Star weekend to relax, because he just only has to play in the rookie and the NBA rookie showcase.
The Rising Star Challenge, or the Rising Star game, whatever.
Right, the Rising Star game. So he has a whole 2 weeks to relax. Let the man play. Let him develop. Let him get out there with Jallo Okafor and form the Twin Towers and stuff like that. And, I think I definitely agree with you. I definitely think they're being overly cautious. I don't know if I agree that they're trying to lose. I just think that they're just being overly cautious. And the same thing will happen with Joel. Well, not Joel. With Ben Simmons too. They haven't let him play this year. So I definitely think that they are being overly cautious. I don't really think it's a big deal. I think that they see that the Sixers are close. They're 3 or 4 games out of the 8th spot on the Eastern Conference for a playoff spot. So we'll see what happens with them. And I'm excited for what the Sixers will be. they're a borderline playoff team right now. But next year, especially if they keep Jallo Okafor, let him be in the starting lineup as a power forward, let Ben Simmons come in there, and then get two people around them to start a shooting guard and point guard, I think they'll be good. But that's just me. And we're going to move on to another. Actually, because it's late and we got a little bit of a late start, and I want to keep this as close to 12:30 as we can. So I'm going to. I know Trey will probably agree with this because I know he has to also. We both have a busy Saturday today, so I'm just gonna move right along to my hot take, and we can talk about. If we can move on to next week. So my hot take is on the Muslim ban, and it's definitely Donald Trump's travel ban / Muslim ban, / Muslim ban goes deeper than sports, and here's why. As I illuminated earlier when I talked about the vetting process and how tough it is, I gave you some stats on that. Definitely, if you listen to this podcast currently or you're gonna watch later, do everyone who in this podcast and the Crossover Sports Podcast as a brand, as a whole, do all of us a favor and look up the State Department's website and really dig into what the vetting process entails. And then once you learn about the vetting process and the stuff that it entails, see if you will, after reading that, agree or disagree with the Muslim ban. And it's deeper than sports and politics because this ban, the way this law was written so irresponsibly that it stopped people with green cards, people with visas. It's got countries like Israel who have citizens from some of these 7 places who are Israelis who come into the United States to teach at colleges, universities, to do research, are part of the government, are translators. It's done a disservice to them. It stopped a lot of people. The government came out today and said it had to revoke at least 60,000 visas this week, and it's only been a week. So this is bad, y'all. We talked about McCarthyism, but this goes deeper than that. We have athletes like Mohamed Farah. You know him better as Sir Mo Farah. He's a world-class runner for Great Britain, right? And he's from Sudan. He's over back in his home country right now having a running clinic for Nike because he's a Nike spokesman for the track and field. And he's worried if he'll ever be able to come into the country. Now, Eric Trump, to his credit, came out and said that Mo Farah would be allowed into the country, no problem. But that just shows how deep and irresponsible this ban is. That somebody like Eric Trump, who doesn't work for our government, has to take on the role for his father because his father rolled out this plan so horribly. And it's not just him. Luau Deng doesn't know if he'll be able to come back once he leaves to go spend a couple of days in his home country. If he'll be able to come back to play for the Lakers. There's so many athletes that are affected by this. So many athletes of Muslim descent. So many of our soldiers. This is deeper than just politics and sports. This is as Matt said earlier. I guess his phone died. As Matt said earlier, this is a human rights issue. This violates the Constitution, both the First Amendment and the Third Amendment. And to drive the point home even more, the NBA this week had to call the State Department and ask them to clarify because the NBA is a global game, it's an international game, and they call some of these teams, for example, like the Iraqi national basketball team, to come and train with the USA basketball program. They invite them to come in and play against them and learn the sport of basketball. and just to see that sports is a great uniter. You know, we talk on this podcast. You know, the three of us, Matt's not here right now, but the three of us are former athletes and everything, and so we know about the unifying factor of sport, the trenches feeling that comes with sport, and the fact that you are interacting with people of different nationalities, different races, of all different everything. And to see that the purpose of sports to bring us together as something that's independent of politics is threatened right now because of this Muslim ban is a travesty, a huge travesty. Well, I'm sorry, to channel our current president, a huge travesty. And we need to rise up to not only send our soldiers and our days, but we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we vote in November 2018 for the midterm elections. Get involved. If nothing else, if you don't feel your politician represents you, then run for office. You only have to be 25 to be a representative in the United States Congress. And you know, this ban is so much bigger than sports, and we need to work on it. So we need to definitely get on it, man, because we need to be on it. And this is just the start. We're gonna have 4 years of this. So the sports world has come out and condemned it. The civilian side has come out and condemned it. The governmental side has condemned it. And you know what? For that, to anyone in our military, to any athletes, anybody connected to athletes, to anybody in the State Department, to all the people in the State Department, and all 900 of you who signed the dissent cable saying we vehemently disagree with this ban. To everybody who doesn't work in government that vehemently disagrees with this, keep fighting. We have to keep fighting. This is a violation of human rights. It's a violation of our Constitution. And yes, like I said earlier, I understand protecting the homeland and making sure everybody is safe. But as I pointed out earlier, most of the people who we love to point out, the San Bernardino people, the Fort Hood shooter, even Dylann Roof himself, even though he's not Muslim, they were all radicalized. They all share one thing. They were radicalized on the internet. And since the government doesn't have an internet, a dedicated internet task force like Russia, like China, people who are dedicated to being a dictatorship and controlling the internet, this is always going to be a problem. Radicalization that comes later because of the internet. So we need to do something. And this ban goes deeper than sports and politics. This ban is an attack on fundamental human rights, and it needs to be thought. And the only way it's going to be thought is not by athletes, not by anybody else, but by you, the common citizen. We have to decide as citizens, how are we going to let this stand? Are we going to let people be unfairly targeted from these 7 countries who haven't attacked us, who all 7 of these countries have not carried out a successful terrorist attack on United States soil in 30 years. I'm going to let that sink in. 30 years. And that alone should tell you that none of these countries deserve to be on this list. Thank you. So that was my crossover hot take on why the travel ban / Muslim ban is more than just politics and sports. As you've seen, often we have different people come on here and give their final hot take. Next week it's his turn again. I know he's going to be surprised because I haven't texted him yet or asked him yet. But I'm formally asking Trey CT3 to be on deck for a hot take next week of his choosing. And definitely sorry that it came as such a surprise, but it's on my mind right now, so I wanted to say it right now. So that was my final hot take. Thank you guys for rocking out with me, especially just being late because of previous engagement that I had that pushed the podcast back an hour. I want to thank Trey and Matt for being here. Matter of fact, I'm gonna let them share their final thoughts, and then we'll close this down. But thank you guys for listening. So go ahead, Matt.
Let's see here for the Phillies. Let's see what's today. The what? The 4th. All I can say is 10 days till spring training. That's all. That's it.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that you want me to do the final take next week. No, I'm just joking. But I look, I'm excited for college basketball season. It seems like college basketball season has been a little bit lackluster so far, but I'm excited. All right, I'm excited.
All right, guys. That wraps up our crossover sports podcast for the day. As we always do, we start on a Friday and early on the Saturday morning. We thank you guys so much for listening to us talk about sports, talk about politics, talk about anything else that we like to talk about. As you see, we're just three young guys and the girl who's not here, but she'll be here next week, and hopefully we'll have more people again. But thank you for listening. Thank you for rocking out. Thank you to our loyal viewership. Thank you to everybody. Have a good weekend. Safe travels. Deuces.